Welcome to the Morning Tempo Podcast. I am your host, Roberto Hernandez. On this podcast, I have conversations with business owners and the entrepreneurial, all with a slant toward creativity. My guest for this episode is Linda Johnston, co-founder and managing director of Auchrannie Resort, which is located on the Scottish Isle of Arran. Her involvement in the business started as a way to provide a pool to the island community, and they now support 2 swimming pools. Auchrannie is the first and only Scottish hotel/resort to become employee-owned, and we talk about this. We also talk about how she, Linda that is, grew from being a PE, physical ed teacher, to masterful business owner in the hospitality space. We discuss ethics, ethos, and value-driven decisions, trying new things and implementing new policies, the balance between financial stability, their guests, their customers, and their staff, marketing the business through delivering greatness, and we even talk about coffee. Linda is truly inspiring. In fact, I would say she's amazing. You're going to enjoy this conversation, I promise. Here is me and Linda Johnston.
We're not an unusual business, but, I think, we kind of follow your own philosophy of people are more important than profit, and we're a very community-based organisation, and obviously employee ownership's a big thing for us as well, going forward. So for us it's all about values and ethos and doing the right thing.
I love what you were just mentioning about people before profits. I endeavored to do this in my own business life, and I was fascinated with the somewhat recent, conversion to employee ownership. Can you tell me why that was important and exactly how that part of Auchrannie came about?
Sure. It might be a bit of a long story. I'm sure you're aware that the reason we actually started Auchrannie over 30 years ago was actually to build a pool for the island. And we started with a 12-bedroom hotel, and we thought we could build a pool and pay for it. And really we've spent the last 30 years trying to pay for that pool and get a business model that supports the facility, and somehow we actually managed to end up with 2 pools that we now need to support. So, really that's where we came from, was wanting to have that pool in our small community, because we didn't have any local authority facilities, so the community and island visitors needed wet weather facilities, and the kids on the island needed a facility to learn to swim in. So that was really why we started it all. And having done that, and having spent the last 30 years trying to make the sustainability of that a reality, we needed to find a way whereby we could make sure the business continues to support that. And, we didn't want a multinational coming in and buying the business and stopping the local community using the facilities. So we basically, employee ownership came around as a means to make sure that the business always remains in the hands of the employees, and it's always rooted in the island community. So I don't know if that answers your question, Roberto. Really it's to keep the facilities in the hands of the community and the people who work at Auchrannie today. And hopefully it should mean that things remain the same for generations to come, long after I'm not here.
Well, it's a beautiful story. And I love how you put it, that the entirety of the business, you kind of make it sound like it was all about the pools, even 30 years later. And I know you mean it's really about the community. Was just out of curiosity, was there it sounds like there was somewhat imminent threat of something happening, or maybe it's just the foresight of you and the owners or prior owners and employees, that there was an impending threat that this could be one day not in the hands of the community. Is that the way it was and what drove you that, yeah, this is, if we don't do something, it won't be for the community someday?
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, although, the business was started by my late husband and myself, I ended up as the majority shareholder in the business, and with no one to hand it on to, and therefore I needed to find a way for me to progress out of the business, but for the business to remain with its values, the same values it has today. So, really it was to plan for succession from me, to put the business into safe hands, working to the same values, and really to allow myself to retire gracefully from the business when the time comes, without needing to worry about shuffling in my Zimmer, aged 80, trying to sort out the problems as well. So, that was the imminent threat, was what was going to happen to the business once I wanted to retire, or in the fullness of time, if something happens to me, as it inevitably will. We needed to progress the business on to the next generation, and finding a reliable way to do that.
So, Linda, I gathered that you first went to the island of Arran in your early 20s, and correct me if I get any of this wrong.
Yep, sure.
Or feel free to fact check me, as one of my favorite podcasters says. But and you went there to teach physical ed, and
That's
today,
right.
and I know it's been a lot of time, but today I hear you talking about things that are essentially legacy, and for the business, and you mentioned something else, which is basically passing on the business, helping the business live beyond yourself. I also gathered you have been surrounded by, and maybe very intentionally surrounded yourself by, a lot of it looks and sounds like a lot of smart people who are like-minded in many ways. I guess a lot of people might go, wow, how did you make the leap from, even though it's been a number of years, and I'm sure it's been an MBE of sorts, alternate outside of the university system, so to speak, but people might ask, how did you make yourself, find yourself with the mindset and the drive to do what you're doing today, having started out from, arguably humble beginnings on the island when you first got there?
Mm-hmm. I think really from learning from everyone around me. Throughout the years, I've worked with thousands of people, both outside and inside the business, many of whom have been extremely skilled professionals at what they do. And obviously, I'm aware that my background is not in business or hospitality. So I've always made it my business to learn from other people, and it's something that doesn't scare me at all. I like to bring people into the business who know more than me. There are many people in my business who know more than me in their areas. I don't have accountancy skills. I don't have IT skills. There's loads of skills I don't have. So I like to bring other professional people who are like-minded into the business. I like to learn from them, but I also like to let them get on and do their jobs as well, because there's no point in me interfering with their professional judgment either, as long as what they're doing is in the general direction that I want to travel in with the business. So, in short, I learn from other people, and the people who come into the business are people who are also passionate about the same type of things as I am, and we all want to work together to make Auchrannie a better place for everyone, for the community, and for the people who work for us.
It sounds simple enough, although I know there has been a lot of wisdom at work on your part and the part of those closest to you to think that way, to bring on these smart people. Has there been anything you can impart upon listeners that you learned along the way, be it one of the most valuable things you've picked up in the entirety of your journey about business in general, or about the process of learning to be a bigger business person than you always have been the year before and the year before that?
I think really the main things I've picked up along the way is that you should always act in accordance with the values that you hold. And I think the most important thing for me is always acting with integrity and trying to do the right thing and being fair and really, really thinking things through that you do. And I just believe you can't go wrong if you do that. Another thing I believe is that you need to let people flourish. You can't stifle people's thinking. You need to let people work with their own ideas. And we need to try things as a business. We are not the kind of business that will think about something for an eternity before we try doing it. If it's something that we all intrinsically have talked through and believe is the right thing to do, we'll give it a go. And we don't have a fear of something not working. Because if it doesn't work, then we change it. We don't regard that as failure. We think we need to get ahead and try new things. And as I say, if those things don't work, then we tweak them, we change them, or we completely stop them and we try something different. So yeah, we like to move quickly, innovatively, and we do like a high degree of creativity, to be going on at all levels of the business to make it work.
Sure.
Not having everything coming from me or other senior managers. We like stuff coming through from the roots of the business at all levels of the business, all departments of the business. And, it can make a very exciting environment to operate in. And I do still, to this day, 30 years later, find working here an exciting environment to work in. And I find the people I work with exciting and enjoyable to work with as well. So we have a nice, exciting, fulfilling workplace.
You must. I guess I should mention for those of you who don't make time but are listening, who don't make time to kind of look at what Linda and her team has done at Auchrannie. In my notes, I had that you'd grown from a 16-bedroom guest house to a resort now comprising 2 4-star hotels with 85 rooms, 35-star self-catering luxury lodges, 14 retreats, 3 iconic restaurants, a shop, 2 leisure clubs with pools, and on and on. And it's an incredible story and clearly very fun. Can you, speaking of change and trying things and not viewing things that didn't necessarily work out as well as you might have hoped as failures, can you mention a couple of changes in 2 categories, if you don't mind? One is, what's the I don't know the best word. It kind of depends on what comes to memory for you, but maybe the craziest or the one with the worst outcome, something that you guys tried that didn't work, and what has been one of the best things?
Worst and best things that we've ever done. I do find that quite difficult to answer. I don't know. Everything I think we do at the time is the best thing. And we always try and make it the best thing, and we always try to move on to make everything we do the best thing we've ever done and to keep moving forward. So, I think everything we've done has worked surprisingly well. On the larger scale, when you talk about, all the bigger developments, the restaurants, the leisure clubs, the spa, the playbarn, all the different rooms, lodges and retreats we have. I think, we do a good job in terms of market research and customer research before we launch into anything that costs a lot of money to do. We don't make snap decisions about that kind of thing. The kind of thing that I'm trying to think of something that we made a very quick decision on. It's just a silly thing that we would make a snap decision on would be a restaurant that we've never taken bookings for before. Mm-hmm. But because the resort's grown so much bigger, we opened a new wing, and all of a sudden we just could not cater for our residents. We were getting complaints. So myself and our general manager sat down one morning, we talked about the same problem, and we made the decision to change to a bookings-only restaurant, and we implemented it that afternoon. And that's the kind of decision that we'll take, fairly often in the business. We'll have quite a major change of policy, and we'll implement it very, very quickly. And that's also the kind of decision we might make quickly and then go, oh, whoa, we've kind of taken that a wee bit too far. Let's change it, One thing that's been pretty successful for us as a business in the last few years has been our decision to accept dogs into the business, for example. When this was maybe about longer than 5 years ago now, we decided that we would let dogs stay in the business, and we opened up certain bits of the business to allowing dogs. And as we went through the years, we allowed them into more and more areas as we learned how to manage the dog situation, mm-hmm. so that they didn't annoy people that didn't like dogs. And then at one point, we just took that too far. We let them into too many places, and that was another reason or occasion when we had to say, okay, we've just taken that one a wee bit too far. Let's just claw it back a wee bit and change direction on that. But just to speak a bit more about dogs, I don't know how dogs are viewed in your part of the country, but last year in our business we had 1,706 dogs stayed with us.
Wow.
That was 24% up in last year. But wow. We reckon that dogs, or people with dogs, contribute about 8% of our business a year. So it's become a really, really important area for us. So, and it's something that we enjoy trying to influence other businesses to do similarly as well. So I don't know if I've answered any of the questions you just asked me.
Of course you did.
Ramble.
No, that's great. That's great, and thanks for bringing up the dog-friendly thing. I had a note here to ask about it, and the statistics were something I wasn't expecting to hear. That's really nice, and I commend you for doing that, and also obviously observing how it impacted the business and at moments in a less than positive way, and how it's been such a positive thing for you too. I was listening to some of the wonderful Girl Tries Life podcast by our mutual friend Victoria Smith that you were on back in 2018, and there was something that you just mentioned. I think it was a little bit in passing. It was in the thread of an answer to one of Victoria's questions, and you happened to mention there was a period in time, perhaps early on, where the business was overspending its budget and the banks, weren't too happy. And I was really curious to know, assuming you either remember a time when that was definitely happening, or maybe even remember the conversation you had with Victoria, but what that was like as a business, and what was going through your mind or the collective mind of the team when you were overspending. Was there a lot of nervousness, or was there a clear light at the end of the tunnel for you?
I think the period that was happening was really pretty close to when we started the development, Roberto. And as you probably know, we came into the hospitality business as happy amateurs, and very naive as to what it all meant. And because of the lack of experience, the project grew arms and legs. Even the initial conversion of the 16-bedroom guest house into the 12-bedroom hotel was when we really overspent. But I think we were all aware that we needed to do it right if it was ever going to work. At that point, I wasn't as involved in the financial side of the business. That was more my husband and our associate, Ronnie Mann, who was also a CA and still works with us today, incidentally. He's still a board member 32 years later.
Wow.
So they were managing more the financial side of the business at that point, and I spent more time knocking down walls and helping doing the grouting. However, I was very aware of the tension. And, okay, right, this is a bit worrying. The bank aren't very happy. But at that point, we managed to get some non-executive directors on board, one of whom was an ex-bank general manager who was a personal friend of my late husband. And he was specifically brought on because of his contacts within the banking industry. And through him, we managed to get a different bank to take on our account. And because we did make a success of what we had done, because we had done it properly, we are still with that bank to this day. And happily, now we have, a very good relationship with our bank, who are extremely supportive with everything we try to do. In the last 10 years, I'm sure you're aware that there's been quite a period of austerity in Great Britain, and in that period, our bank has stood behind us every step of the way, and it's supported a ton of development that we've done in the last 10 years, in terms of development of lodges, retreats, hotel rooms, play barns, spas. They've allowed us to borrow every single penny to do that over the last 10 years, and we have a very supportive relationship with them. Basically, I suppose, because over the last 30 years we've proved that when we produce a business plan, then we deliver on that business plan, and that's through the very careful planning and development work and research we do before we go into anything like that.
That's interesting, and I'm sitting here, I don't know if a question quickly came to my mind. You mentioned the director or directors that you had brought on board, and I've served on boards for nonprofits, and I suppose I've helped to bring in board members, but I'm curious. I was curious immediately. I found myself wondering what type of incentives, how did you attract that particular person or any of the best directors that you did to your board, or was this someone who was an employee? Maybe I misunderstood.
Ronnie Mann, yeah, he was an employee who we brought on, one of our kind of senior project and development managers, who's been with us for the last 30 years, and who's always sat in our board. And when we became employee owned, we also appointed him as a company director, along with some of our other senior people, as well as the people who used to be shareholders in the business. Mm-hmm. The other directors I spoke about who were with us in our early years, the non-executive directors, they came on board really because they were friends of my late husband, and also because they loved Arran and they wanted to help to support us in moving the business forward. So in a way, they believed in the dream we were trying to create as well, and wanted to come on board to help us to do that for the island.
I'm shifting gears a bit, but were you was your business a standout in terms of trying to be both financially sustainable, but also just a sustainable project for the island? Was anyone else doing that besides Auchrannie? when you started doing it, and is anyone else doing it today?
I don't know that anyone else was doing it then or doing it in the same way we are doing it now. However, our island, is a place where really all of the island businesses work together to make the island a better place to be. We have an organisation called Visit Arran, which you may be aware of, which the majority of the businesses are all part of, and we all collaborate together on everything to do with the island, to do with tourism, to do with sustainability. So I think, as a community, Arran is very much a community-based place where, we don't all compete with each other. There's no prickliness. We share facts, figures, everything, equipment, intelligence, in order that we can make our destination a better place for people to visit and a better place for all of us to live as well. So, our ethos is definitely something that's echoed and understood, I think, throughout the whole island. And I know that a lot of areas in Scotland would like to have the same working relationships and cohesiveness that Arran has as an island community.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a unique place, and you and your business have been a solid contributor and then some to what exists culturally on the island. Getting back to the overspending budget, or I guess the financial aspects of the business, I also made a note, I think from something I heard you say on Victoria's podcast, that maybe it's been a lifelong thing for the company, maybe a little less so as you've evolved and matured, but you mentioned financial stability balanced with the needs of your guests. Can you give some examples of how you had to lean on that particular, I guess, value, if I can use that word, in the business? And is it something that you've somewhat been able to grow past? Not that it's a bad thing; it actually sounds like a wonderful thing. But maybe you've just become so good at what you're doing in more recent years that it's almost done without even thinking much about it.
I think it is. It is done without thinking much about it. We were very, very well aware that we need to balance the financial needs of the business with making sure we absolutely deliver the guest experience that we need to keep our guests coming back time after time. We don't actually have, our main marketing thrust at Auchrannie is to give guests such a great experience that they come back and that they go out and tell all of their friends to come. So if we don't do that, then we're going to have to spend more on marketing. So that's how we market our businesses, to deliver greatness to our guests in terms of product and service. We also have to make sure that we absolutely deliver to our team members. We need to make sure they are looked after as well as we can possibly look after them in terms of how much we pay them, their work-life balance, the training and development, the accommodation they stay in. Everything, needs to be right. We need the right people to deliver the right service, to give us the right profits. All of those three things work together for us to give us a successful business. And, these days we don't overspend budgets. We're a very much more organised organisation than we were back in 1988 when it was a bit harem scarum, and it was all intuitive, or mostly intuitive in those days, because we didn't have the experience. But these days we are, a very tightly, managed business in a financial and budgetary sense. So, we don't overspend budgets anymore because we have the experience to manage that now.
Mm-hmm.
And if something happens that we need to spend money differently, then we make a change to our budgets. One example I can give that we're actually in the middle of at the moment is we have an affordable housing crisis on our island, and people who work with us find it difficult to find accommodation to live in that they can afford. So as a result, we as a business have a lot of staff accommodation for people to stay in who work with us. But in the middle of this winter, we found ourselves in a situation where we had all accommodation full, and this is in the winter. So we made the decision that we needed to create more quality staff accommodation for our team. And in order to afford to do that, we actually cancelled our refurbishment programs to the guest areas of the hotel, because our ethos was, well, we need good team members better than we need a beautiful corridor. So we actually cancelled £350,000 worth of refurbishment work, and we're currently building a new staff accommodation unit for our team, so that when we hit this summer, we can actually house the number of people we need to deliver the service that's required to our guests. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah,
and then going off again.
No, and then some. I'm just sitting here imagining that clearly your business is very loyal to its staff, and there's also this thing of necessity. You can't meet your objectives and your goals without those great people, and they can't do it with you if they don't have the quality living. But it sounds like a very smart move. I gathered that the business is obsessed with guest feedback, but it sounds like also you might be similarly so with the staff. How you mentioned making sure that you take care of them. Mm-hmm. How does your business go about making sure that they that you know what staff is thinking? What type of methods do you employ to get their feedback, I guess?
Okay. We're always trying to improve what we do in that front. We have always had an appraisal system. We call it coffee chats, which all team members have at least every 6 months. They have a one-to-one with their manager, they have a coffee, and they chat about how things are. And it isn't just about what the business thinks about their performance, it's what they think of the business's performance. Are we delivering work-life balance, a healthy lifestyle, a fair deal, decent accommodation, all of these things. So it's all fed back through the coffee chat system, and there's also other things like staff forums. We've done staff surveying over the years as well, to check on our performance as employers. And the most recent thing we've been doing is we entered a survey called the Sunday Times Top 100, and it's a confidential survey that's sent digitally to all staff members, which really delves deeply into how we are performing in 8 areas with regard to staff engagement, etc. And we're in the midst of analysing all that at the moment, and the results are very, very good. But from that survey, we are able to have work plans so that we can improve weak areas as we go forward, and we'll have work plans for every single department, and which the team all feed into as well. And hopefully we'll do the survey again next year. We've got stretch benchmarks to hit, and hopefully we'll keep improving our performance in the way we look after our people year on year by getting the confidential feedback and the engagement with the team and trying to make things better all the time.
How many people are on staff currently, and how big is the HR team?
We've got a staff of about 180 at the moment, mm-hmm. and we've got 2 HR full-time HR people, but there's all sorts of other people that support them. For example, staff accommodation managers and all that kind of thing, who feed into them as well. And a lot of the HR is also delegated to departmental managers as well, so that, the restaurant manager would recruit his own team, do the coffee chats with his team, and the HR team support the departmental managers.
I'm really going to switch gears now, but you mentioned coffee because of the coffee chats, and I am a self-admitted caffeine addict. So if I come to Auchrannie someday, what kind of coffee experiences can I expect?
Well, I hope you would get a good coffee experience. I think the UK, probably follows behind the US a bit, but I think we're catching up a bit now with our coffee culture. Again, we're trying to get local provenance in our coffee. So, we use a coffee company who is Scottish-based, and there may be an island-based company coming on board. This could be a controversial one, but we moved from manually operated coffee machines and espresso machines to automatic machines a couple of years ago, because what we found was you can provide the best machine in the world and you can provide the best product in the world, but if the operator gets it wrong, you can end up with a pretty horrible coffee. So with our huge staff, we must have about 40 staff who are all responsible for making and serving coffees. We decided to install automatic machines, which do use the bean is ground as the coffee is made. They use fresh milk. And we reckon we're getting a pretty consistent product from these machines. So, Roberto, I hope you would agree. Please do come and have a coffee with us somewhere and give us your opinion. But we would absolutely hope to give you a really nice coffee. And hopefully the coffee would be exactly the same in each of our outlets every time you come in.
Well, I certainly hope to visit. I've looked at some photos, and I've learned a little bit about Auchrannie through my research and through Victoria's story of you. And I must say the food pictures make the cuisine there look amazing. Now, I'm actually a pretty simple coffee drinker, so this was interesting for me to hear. It makes sense what you did, the transition that you made. So now I have to ask, if you can, are you a coffee drinker before I ask this next question?
Yes, I've just had a sip of my cold coffee that's been sitting on my desk for the last half hour.
Okay, you need to, I guess I'm making you talk too much. You need to learn to squeeze one in while I'm talking. But so knowing what you remember about your best team members who were at those manual machines, as you refer to them, how does the coffee compare today if you could stack the automated version up to those who really had it dialed in pretty well?
I think it stacks up pretty well. I'm quite obsessive about the coffee. I have a coffee from the machines every day, and I get consistently a better coffee than I did before when I was asking for someone to make me one. So, I think the modern machines are very good. Obviously, there's good machines and there's bad machines, but I think we have good machines and we have good coffee. So, fingers crossed that we're absolutely delivering it. If I didn't think we were, I would absolutely want something done about it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So you probably don't know this about me, but about a year ago, my wife and I found ourselves involved in a restaurant venture, and in Panama, finding a good cup of coffee is not so hard. A lot of places that you wouldn't necessarily expect it have very nice coffee equipment and people baristas making coffee, but I have taken more notice, because those things are very expensive. I have taken more notice of the different automated solutions. So now I'm kind of curious to look and see what a next level machine looks like, something a little more like what you described, because I've been fantasizing of having an espresso machine in there and some real baristas, but I am planning to. Okay, I know what I can do in the interim. We're going to put a French press in here and market that to the clientele that we get.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Linda. One of the things I really hoped to explore on this podcast, when I made a bit of a shift in it last year. I rebranded it, and I wanted to continue doing it. And I have another one that is very similar, but it's focused on independent musicians. But independent musicians are just like independent business people in a sense, except they're constantly trying to create, music. But I figure and assume that business people like yourself have this certain creative aspect to them, to their mentality. Perhaps they're literally or more conventionally a creative individual. But when I say the word creativity, or the words creativity or creative, does anything come to mind for you throughout your journey that you've had to apply, or sort of just found yourself applying with your team, that was a bit creative, be it on finding a solution or something else that you did in the business?
Everything. I think creativity is at our heart. I think as a business, we love to create. Whether it's creating a new menu, the food within that menu, the way that menu is actually physically produced, the systems that surround the implementation of that menu are creative. So even, the simplest form of hospitality involves creativity and artisticness. We are, as an independent business, we absolutely have control of everything we do as a business. And when you said the word creativity, I suddenly found myself getting really excited, because it is really what we all enjoy within the business, is their ability to be creative and to influence, everything, from every product that we create, every room that we build or refurbish, restaurant that we create, refurbish, rebrand. All of that is in our hands, which is very, very exciting. Obviously the ability to take a project from inception right through to launch is a very creative process, and it's something that we have in our grasp. It's not something that is sent down to us from head office to create. Literally everyone is involved when we create. Let's say we created the latest thing we created was our new retreats, and we would involve all of our team members in creating that, even right down to, is this working for the housekeeping team? Do they have any suggestions in the way we're designing things which would help them do their jobs? So from thinking of the project to start with, to designing the floor plans, the interior design, the operational procedures that go around, all of that is creative. And I certainly find that side of the business hugely exciting. Yeah.
Oh, I find just that's very exciting to hear. Thank you for sharing it. I'm so glad glad I got to ask you the question. Okay, one more, and I'll let you get about your Friday afternoon, Linda. But is there anything? I'm borrowing this, by the way, lest anyone recognizes. But I'm borrowing this from one of my favorite podcasters, and there are a few, so I can't even remember which one of them specifically. But is there anything about you that people would be surprised to know about that they wouldn't otherwise if I hadn't just asked you, that you're willing to share?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I suppose they might be surprised that I used to play play football in the Scottish Women's League. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I'm trying to picture it. That sounds great. Sounds like it was a good memory, judging by your laughter.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Linda, this has been a really wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you spending time with me. I know it wasn't easy for us to align our schedules, and I thank you for all the persistence. There's so much more.
Things came up, yeah.
Yeah. There is so much more we could have talked about, but maybe we'll be able to do a round 2 someday. And I hope to come visit. Auchrannie is a beautiful place, and I hope to do it when I can come try the current generation of coffee there too.
You'll be very welcome any time you can manage over, Roberto. It'd be lovely to see you.
Thanks again for listening. If you like what you heard today, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. This podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you are interested in learning how to support the podcast, visit morningtempo.com/crowd sponsor. Among other things you'll find there is a way to join the Morning Tempo email list for insiders who want to know what I'm learning from other business owners and entrepreneurs that I speak and work with, including those you hear on this podcast. Insiders get an occasional email from me with business insights, recommendations, hacks, and anything I come across that could help you in your creative entrepreneurial journey. And it's free. You can unsubscribe at any time. Until next time.